Welcome to the place where we learn about and learn from the leaders in our field who are powering creativity. I am Aaron Dworkin, and this is Arts Engines. Thanks again for joining me here on Arts Engines. Today's guest is Clive Gillinson, who serves as Executive and Artistic Director of Carnegie Hall. Clive, welcome back to the show.
Aaron, it's wonderful to see you again, and thanks very much for inviting me back again.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's really amazing. We're coming up on almost a year of the launch of Arts Engines, and we've had this just wonderful perspective from arts leaders across the country. And I think especially from the perspective that you have, leading the arts organization of organizations, and such a centerpiece that what you share not only gives us insight into, kind of how are things at Carnegie Hall, but also, what are things that we can learn from, what can we emulate at different organizations around the country. So in that, of course, why not dive into what we are all still immersed in, which of course is the pandemic, which changed our lives. And I think as we look back, no one would have thought we'd be sitting here a year later, pretty much still on quarantine, especially as it relates to our art making. But what I'm curious is kind of a little bit less on, okay, this is what we needed to do a year ago. But now, as we're in this odd kind of state of limbo where we're coming out of it for sure, people are getting vaccinated. We know that a huge swath of the population has had the disease. And so, and it seems like numbers are coming down. Where does that leave leadership and artistic leadership? So if you could share a little of kind of how are you viewing things looking forward in this limbo environment for Carnegie?
Well, Aaron, I should do a quick sweep across all the things that we've done, all the things we're doing. We closed a little while ago, or rather we announced the continuing closure a little while ago of Carnegie Hall through September. So it means we won't have had concerts really for 1.5 years at that point, which is pretty staggering considering Carnegie Hall had never missed, virtually never missed a day of concerts in its 130 years, through world wars, through also, the Great Depression, everything. So, I mean, it's an astounding fact, really, when you think of the impact, not just on us, but it's the equivalent impact across society in every way. So through that, it's obviously led, like it has with so many other organizations, to a tremendous amount of innovation around digital. We've created several program strands, Live with Carnegie Hall, Learn with Carnegie Hall. We've done a lot of work creating specially created programs to make sure we can connect with donors, sponsors, and all the people who support us, and trustees. So our digital connections now are the absolute key for how we keep everybody who's important to Carnegie Hall engaged with Carnegie Hall, and how we keep engaged with our audiences as well, not just here, but more and more around the world as well. So that's been a huge part of what this few months has been about.
Awesome. And could I just pose a quick question to that? Have you found now, having had this experience for almost a year, how does that engagement compare to previously? Do you find in certain ways your audience has even expanded, and or are there different levels of engagement? How would you characterize it?
Well, firstly, our audience has expanded because, of course, it's not limited to those who can physically come and attend Carnegie Hall. But the other thing is, with every single thing we've done with digital, we've looked through the lens of how can we make sure that once we open again, this will become a complementary part of how we engage with people, so that every single thing we do, whether it's putting all our education programs online, Live with Carnegie Hall, Learn with Carnegie Hall that I talked about, the work with sponsors and donors, all of that can actually, once we're open again, complement what we're doing physically. and be part of a much bigger picture of engagement. And the other thing as well is it'll mean that effectively the way Carnegie Hall serves people, both in this city, but across the nation and even worldwide now, will have expanded monumentally because of what's happened. So for all that this has been a ferociously difficult time, I think we'll come out of this a far, far better organization.
Wow, it's just extraordinary. And one of those things too, I was curious, the geography, do you think that not just for Carnegie, but for other institutions, that their geographic limitations will now kind of forever be changed a little bit, that there will always be kind of this potentially more geographically distanced audience, but who have a close connection with the institution?
I think that's absolutely true in principle. I think in reality, it's going to be a little bit selective as well. I mean, the reality is not every single organization in the world is on the world stage. And, so if one's got an organization that is fantastic locally and really serves its local community, but it can't compete with the major players, then probably its footprint around the world will not necessarily be the most important thing to that organization. But everything they do digitally, again, will utterly enhance everything they're doing to reach their people who are their own community. But I think for those organizations that genuinely are on the world stage, and that's, I mean, it's not just Carnegie Hall, obviously, but it's the New York Philharmonic, it's the, many of the great orchestras in this country, great ensembles of every sort, doing every sort of music. I think it will put all of those organizations and individual performers, it will put all of them on the world stage in a way they never were before.
Wow, wow. And so for these, kind of digital infrastructure, was that something where organizations that may have done kind of quick piecemeal or may not have even really gotten too much into digital yet, always just hoping the pandemic would lessen? What's your sense about the need for artistic organizations ongoing? So not just, okay, this was during the pandemic, but moving forward, need to invest in digital infrastructure?
Well, I think firstly, this has pushed everybody to accelerate beyond belief what they were doing. And that's particularly so with us as well. I mean, I would have thought we've probably done 3 or 4 years development in sort of 9 months. So what we're doing now is completely different from what we were doing before, and completely different from what we would have been able to do before if we were to a large extent focused on live music and performances. So, it has helped all of us to do that. But to me, the most important thing is that it all becomes part of a much broader experience we can offer to audiences, to donors, to everybody who's involved with us, and everybody we'd like to involve with us as organizations. So it means we can transform our relationships. And it means all the things we've done where, we're really engaging with people, every day, which obviously you can't do when they're coming to the hall. Nobody's coming every day. It means we can have a different relationship. And that's why I'm so keen on everything we do being something that's developed with an eye to being part of the future as well.
Wow. Yeah, no, and I really love that idea. And I think a lot of our audience, that sense that we really can, as institutions, be redefining what it means to what our relationship with our audience is. We can really redefine even what an artistic relationship is. Just out of curiosity, say there's either an artist or any of our other audience members who's sitting and going, okay, so I hear that, I understand it. So, but what does it look like? Could you even paint a picture of, say we're 2 years down the road, so pretty much right past vaccinations and hopefully not a significant recurrence. So we're several years into the future, and what otherwise would have been a standard concert on just main stage at Carnegie, how would that actually look as you think 2 years ahead now, right? What does that look like in this kind of broader audience and engagement? What would be happening around that, or before or after? What does that look like?
Well, I think there's going to be many, many dimensions to this. But if you're talking specifically about a single concert, I can well imagine that around each concert we'll be creating material that introduces people to that concert, that creates context around that concert. So if they're interested to know and learn more before they come and hear the concert, that there'll be something that enables them to do that in advance. But when I look at our education programs, for instance, we were reaching 800,000 people a year through our education programs, and that was physically connecting to them around the country. Now we're reaching pretty well that number virtually, so that once we reopen, it means all the people we couldn't reach physically before, we can continue to reach and engage with. And essentially, we'll probably be doubling the number of people our education programs are serving. So there are just so many different ways this is going to appear. And looking at our big festivals, our big festival this year was going to be Voices of Hope, which was looking at artists under oppression. And it was looking at slavery, it was looking at the Holocaust, it was looking at many different areas where, you know, some of the most terrible things in human history happened, and where nonetheless artists created art that inspired people. You know, it wasn't about the misery, it was actually about inspiring people, giving them hope, giving them a sense of identity and something to live for. Now, that is no longer existing in the concert hall, but we're going to be doing a virtual festival. You know, so the festival will still exist, but we're putting it together virtually with all our partners. Well, I would have thought from now onwards, every major festival will not only be physically presented in all those venues around the city, but it will also have a virtual dimension as a complementary aspect to what we're doing and what all our partners are doing. So these are all the ways I think life will change.
Wow, amazing. And you know, we're getting just short on time, but I wanted to kind of just bring this other piece of, you know, talking about issues or artistic content that relates to DE&I or racial equity and all of these things. Do you see, and of course, you know, Sphinx has, you know, enjoyed such a wonderful and impactful partnership and collaboration with Carnegie over the years. Is there a sense that you have of, with this kind of new digital space, that will help issues of racial equity and connecting with more content that will reach broader audiences? Do you feel there's a connection for arts institutions to, in some ways, utilize the digital medium to further these other aspects of programming?
Absolutely, without a doubt. I mean, we've always felt absolutely committed to DEIA, and it's been a central part of what we're about. When one looks at all the festivals we've presented in the time since I arrived, we started them when I arrived, and we've done about 15 festivals, and I think 7 or 8 have actually had in some form or another an engagement with African-American culture, with African-American history. So we've always felt this is a central responsibility for us because, you know, of the legacy of slavery and systemic racism in this country, which we all have to solve together. So I think the answer is that certainly the digital dimension will add to the way we can engage people around this. But we're also, frankly, thinking further about, you know, what are the important things we can do in the concert hall that also address these issues? Even though it's been central for us for many, many years, I still think there's more we want to do. So, you know, we're not saying digital replaces what you want to do in the concert hall. We're very keen to make sure that both dimensions of what we're doing, both live in the hall and digital, really do address the major issues of our day. And clearly, diversity, equity, inclusion, and the whole issue around race, racism, discrimination are things that have to be solved now. And we will continue to play the biggest part we possibly can in that.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. And I think especially for just all of our audiences, just thinking about those ways that we can all collaborate together to further those ends, definitely phenomenal. So unfortunately, we're just out of time, but I did want to ask you again, you know, a lot of these challenges arise, and a big thing that our show does is really give people a window into some of our great arts leaders. And so just wondering, when times get tough, you've got challenges, all of a sudden, you know, the digital landscape collapses because a server went down, who knows what. Where do you go for inspiration? And of course, I know it could be the cello, but just wondering, where do you go for your inspiration and a source of strength when you feel like there might be some obstacles that are insurmountable?
Well, firstly, the most important thing is that you put together a staff around you who are the very, very best at what they do in every way. Because the fact is, no leader knows everything about everything. It's impossible. And so no leader leads alone. A leader leads with a team, as part of a team. So I get a lot of my inspiration from our team because nobody stops thinking about how we can be better, how we can do everything better, how we can inspire each other to grow, develop, nurture talent in every way. So, I mean, for me, through this period, which is frankly the most exhausting I can ever remember, the fact is that we've all done this together and we've all stuck together. I think we've all lifted each other and we've all kept each other really alive and really committed. So the resilience, that a team has, I think is what sustains the team. It's nothing that one person does on their own.
Clive Gillinson, you truly are one of the great arts engines who is powering human creativity in our field. Thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Well, Aaron, thank you, and wonderful to talk to you again.